Shout out to all my NFL fans out there. You know, the Philadelphia Eagles went and saw Sir Donald Trump, the president, yesterday, right? So there was a huge backlash because even me, I didn't know initially. I had talked about it before. You could check out one of the previous videos I did. I didn't know if the Eagles were going to go to the Super Bowl. Sorry, not the Super Bowl. Go to the White House to visit the president because back in 2018, when Malcolm Jenkins was one of the unofficial leaders of the team, or official, I guess you would call it, said that, hey, look, you know, we're taking a stance. We don't like what's going on with this administration, the way it seems to view people, especially black people. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a stance and nobody's going. So from what the report said was that Eagles administration said, look, you know, what we'll do is that we still have some guys that do want to go. So what we'll do is that we'll have a small contingent of players go to the White House. And when they came up with the list, I think it was maybe only 10 players, 10 to 15 players, excluding coaches and staff who wanted to go. So Donald Trump said, you know what, if the entire group isn't coming, basically, I don't want any of you to come at all. So now that was 2018, 2019, whatever. So things change, right? But of course, you know, the more they change, the more they stay the same. So he also continued with his rhetoric. He had nothing positive to say about the Eagles before the Super Bowl that just passed in February. He had nothing but praise for the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, and as he always says it, his beautiful and lovely wife, Brittany Mahomes. He had nothing positive to say about the Eagles at all. Because we know that President Trump doesn't forget any opportunity to be vengeful against people who he feels has slighted him. So that leads us into the guy who I feel like was the major difference in catapulting the Philadelphia Eagles to winning the Super Bowl this year, and really proud of him and think that I always thought that he was a monster. He played for Penn State. He was a great player. He played for the Giants. He was a great player. They just didn't have a great team. And once again, he came here with the Eagles and had a career season. And I rooted for him the whole time. As a matter of fact, I was on his side sometimes to actually go for the rushing record as opposed to, you know, what some of the other players wanted to do, which was have rest or whatever. And then, because I was curious to see who was going to go. And when I saw that because the first snap shot they gave was a video of him, and I mean Saquan Barkley, getting off of one of the helicopters with President Trump, right? You know, no issue with that. I mean, hey, listen, you know, you get a chance to meet the president, especially based off of the hard work that you put in, no issue with it, right? Then more and more of the backlash came because I believe it was only him and maybe out of the 20, they had a contingent go of about 20 plus players. Once again, excluding staff, the owner Jeffrey Lurie and GM Howie Roseman. So maybe they may have had 50 people there, who knows? But only about 20 plus out of the 53-man roster showed up. Now, some of the guys had been cut or, you know, traded or signed with different teams, but they all still had the opportunity because I believe Becton was there and he went to the San Diego Chargers, I believe, the offensive lineman. He was there. He was one of the few black people players there. There were maybe 3 or 4 other black players, but surprisingly enough, none of the major key skill players that were black were there, right? There were a lot of missing Eagles, even in the for the defense that didn't show up. Primarily, I don't think any of the starting black players showed up for the defense. And why do I think that, you know, like I said in the title, Saquon will learn is because Saquon's 28 years old, right? You know, and like I always say around here, you know, we are not going to bash anybody, especially somebody as accomplished as that, because they like, who am I to say that? But the one thing I will say is that I'm a man that's been around and that's older than he is. And what I will say is that over time, you learn different things. You understand things in a different way, because just because we're all black doesn't mean that we all come up the same way, right? Not everybody black is from the inner city. I'm not sure exactly where he's from, but the thing is that I knew he grew up somewhere in Pennsylvania, via New York. But the thing is that once again, nobody knows. Everybody's raised in different ways. Even depending now, as Black people, yeah, there are certain similarities that we have that are kind of like unofficial, right, throughout the entire country. But we still have to respect the way that people were raised, all right, and what their viewpoints of things are. Now, am I still going to root for him next year? You doggone right. Do I still think that he's an amazing player and he doesn't get in any trouble? So, on that note, a good person, you doggone right. Do I agree with him going? No, but I don't have to agree, right? This is where, like, as people, we got to learn how to agree to disagree. But the one thing I will say is that what he can't do, he has to, at some point, even if he may already know, because sometimes, especially after you win a Super Bowl, you do some other stuff and you've done something good for other people outside of yourself. It is hard to take criticism. It is hard to take criticism, especially for when you're not doing anything wrong. Him being there with Donald Trump is not doing anything wrong. But he has to understand, and I'm sure that he does, the political climate of what's going on right now and how Donald Trump has appeared to be in the Black community. Yeah, more Black people voted for him this year, but I think there was something like close to 90% of Black people did not vote for him. Out of the people that voted, 90%. So there obviously are some other things going on. Even as I said in the last video, President Trump does a great job at placating, at showing all of this love to Black people who are celebrity. Why does he do it? In my estimation, he does it because what do most people like to look up to, Black, white, or indifferent? They look up to celebrities. But I'll tell you this, I feel like us as Black people, we have even a higher godly mentality of celebrity, where we almost look at them and whatever they do is law. So, what Donald Trump was doing is just like when he did with his tour. He came to Philly a few times and, he tried to show, hey, I'm down with the people. Certain rappers, he started shouting out certain different people. Right. So then he went to sneaker com. He started selling sneakers because, hey, listen, us Black people, we love some sneakers. Right. I know I sure do. And I'm not separating from that because that's one of our cultural things. So I don't look down at that. I'm proud of that. That's one of our cultural things. But what Saquan has to understand is that, and I'm sure he does, is that there's going to be backlash because you're playing football in a Democratic town, even though the state didn't go Democratic during the election. You're living in a heavily, I think Philadelphia is 85% Democrat. You're living in a heavy Democratic town against a person who, for lack of better words, does not show a lot of respect for the ordinary Black person, not the celebrity, because we did one about Snoop Dogg and, Rick Ross, a couple other people performing for him at his inauguration, Chrisette Michele back in 2016, who got blackballed because of her performance at the inauguration. So he knows how to, handpick certain Black people. Right? Because he could have put anybody on that chopper with him, right? He could have put anybody on there. We know Jalen Hurts didn't go, and we're going to talk about that tomorrow. Jalen Hurts didn't go. It's a couple other people go, so he couldn't have a star quarterback on there. So what's the next best thing? Let me get the star running back who, in my estimation, should have been the MVP this year, right? But we know that they don't give it to a lot of times running backs. But Saquon should have been the MVP this year. So what Trump does, like anybody else that's smart, hey, look, I got this guy. He's at the height of his career. They just won a Super Bowl. Hey, come on, get on the plane with me. And I'm not just going to get a white guy, somebody. I'm going to get you. You're a Black guy, but you're a friendly Black guy. You're a polished Black guy. And it's not a mistake. That's all I'm saying. It's not a mistake. And as a matter of fact, I don't even remember the last time I've seen, and it could have happened. I don't even remember the last time I've seen the president get off of the plane with a player, that's won the Super Bowl or otherwise. He may have, but I've just never seen it. But by him doing that, it makes people doing even that tweet that he sent about Shador Sanders. Talk about that another time. But for him to ingratiate himself to black people, could be all wrong. I doubt it though. But Saquon is still young. Saquon, I think, is only 28 years old. So, and I talk to friends and family members and people, and, the further that we get away from the civil rights movement and what it was all about and, stood for, is that there's more of a watering down effect where, those that have come before us who died and done things to make this a better place for us to live, to give us more rights because we enjoy those rights. And because now a lot more of us are rich or richer, a lot of the things that happen to the common folk, it's not like how it was back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, or with Emmett Till, all that other kind of stuff, because it would be outraged the same way it was for George Floyd, because there's too many cameras everywhere, right? But there is still an issue with racism. And that's what we've been talking about this week. There's still an issue with racism. And then on top of it, by me being a lifelong Eagles fan, I mean, he rooted for the Chiefs. That was the reason why I didn't want him to go. He rooted for the other team. And as a matter of fact, I think because they missed one before, he's still going to have them come and celebrate a win that they had 3 or 4 years ago. Right. So it still lets you know where his heart is. Right. And some reports were saying how, he didn't want to stand next to Jeffrey Lurie or something like that. They were saying and on one of the news sites, yesterday. So he was doing everything he could not to stand next to Jeffrey Lurie. But hopefully he understands why. Because when you live in a world where 90% of people a certain color don't agree with another person, it's not just a coincidence. It's not just because people think that he's a jerk. It's because there's been a lot of wrong stuff done to people. And I know when I had these political debates, people want to say, "Oh, well, he did this and he gives more money to HBCUs and all that other kind of stuff." Great. But, you take away from here, this with the Department of Education, just a bunch of stuff. And like I said, I'm no political scientist, so I'm not going to delve into that. But it's like how I always say, how you grow up and, you have friends or you got a girlfriend or, your parents, you can't remember everything you did, because life is kind of like a snapshot, right? So you can't remember everything your parents did for you or, where they taking you to or what type of sneakers they bought for you. Or, you can remember some things, maybe a concert they took you to or they drove you to college. Shout out, mom. But overall, you know what you remember? You remember how they made you feel. And you either got people that make you feel good or you got people that make you feel bad. And in this situation, hopefully Saquon understands that guy makes a lot of people feel really bad. So that's why people are going to have the backlash, my brother. But hey, I want you to go and run for 2,000 more yards next year. I'm older. So guess what? I don't have to raise my picket sign and say, no Saquon, no Saquon, no Saquon. Hey, man, run, brother, run. Because I don't golf, but yeah. Anyway, until next time, live life, but don't let life live you.